Thank you guys for coming out. It's great to have folks come out. This is the first in a series of live interviews we're going to do here at the Westport Library under the name Persona. Persona is a new company that is a social platform, essentially, that is all about conversations and interviews. It allows you to create conversations yourself, whether they're family or personal conversations, or watch interviews of a wide variety of topics that will be launching on the platform when we officially launch this business in about a month from now. My name is Simmelkjaer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a Westporter. I'm the founder of this company, and I'm really excited to have this weekly stage here in Westport to talk to all kinds of interesting people, both from Westport, around our state, and from different walks of life, both from politics to books, music, all kinds of things. So I'm very excited to have as our first guest here on this stage, Nancy Wyman. And for those of you who don't know...
Thank you very much.
I think the best way to introduce you, Nancy, is just by going through your electoral results, because they're unbelievable. When you look at what...
I don't think that's a good way at all.
I mean, they're as far as I can tell, they're perfect, Nancy. Nancy first ran statewide for controller in 1994. Won with 54% of the vote. Ran again in 1998, won with 56% of the vote. Ran again for controller in 2002 with 62% of the vote, and then again in 2006 with 64% of the vote, and then finally...
I should have stopped then.
Well, no, not really, because then you decided to try something a little bit different. Ran for lieutenant governor in 2010, of course, with Dan Malloy, received 63% of the vote. And by the way, Dan Malloy was elected with only 49.5% of the vote above her on the ticket. So I'm not sure who was on whose coattails on that one, but Nancy, it's great to have you. Let's have a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thanks for having me. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming out. And Rob, thank you for doing this. This is a great idea. What a beautiful place to have it in.
It's a great venue. Thanks to everybody watching as well. We're going to have an audience across YouTube, across our app, and with Dan Woog as well. So thanks to everybody tuning in to watch as well. So Nancy, I want to start just on what's going on right now in the Democratic Party. It's been an interesting week, I think it's fair to say.
It's a nice way of putting it.
For Democrats. You're one of 50 state chairs in this country. I'm guessing the last week you're probably glad that Iowa was not your state.
I woke up that morning thinking I like CT instead of IA. Yeah, I thought that was a good thing.
What is your take on what happened there?
You know, I have to be honest about it. I feel bad for the state party chair there, and I feel bad for the party there. They really did try to do the right thing, energizing and doing something different. They have a caucus system that's different than we have, and it's been working for many, many years. They tried something new to bring it up to date, and it just didn't work out right. So I really do feel bad for them. They did get their final numbers in as of today, so that's good. It's taken a little while, but you know what? If we can all remember sometime, somewhere, that it's taken us a little bit longer than it should have taken us for anything, right? And so I'm going to think about that and saying, hey, listen, we got that results, and now we're on to other things, and we have to look to the near future.
I'm sure there have been a lot of conversations among state chairs the last week about not just what happened in Iowa, but what it should mean going forward for the nominating process. It's obviously early, but what has the tenor of those conversations been?
You know, everybody's now talking about should Iowa and New Hampshire be the first two states, and why were they ever chosen to be the first two states, and how did that work, and what does that mean for us? And so people have called our office and said, why can't you move us up to the beginning? Well, it's not that easy to move us up to the beginning. And in fact, some of the reasons that we have more delegates right now is because we're later in the season. So that's a totally different look at it. People don't understand that there was an agreement done years ago that said this is how it's going to settle up, and we ended up with more delegates to go to the conventions. So we could have more people go.
You know, people have complained about the lack of diversity of Iowa and New Hampshire, that they're not representative of the country, or at least of the Democratic electorate. And you know, when you look at Connecticut, it actually does have a lot going for it. It's a relatively small state, easy to get around. It's certainly much
But we'll
more
talk about
diverse.
transportation later,
We'll
right?
get to that.
Okay, I just wanted to say that.
But, you know, certainly a lot more diverse than, you know, in Iowa or even in New Hampshire. So when you think about it, the state actually has a fair amount going for it.
Absolutely.
If it were one of the early states in this process. But is that something that you would not even look to pursue?
That wouldn't be my way. It's not my job to do that. It's also the Democratic National Committee that will make some of these decisions, and we will see them being made, I'm sure, within the next year or so. But it takes a longer process because it is also federally voted on and statewide voted on. And it's, if you look, as you all know, the same date in New Hampshire and in Iowa is the Republican caucuses. And so there's a balancing act and agreement between the two parties on some of this. Of course, right now, the Republicans don't care. But if you had asked them in 2016, I think they would have had a different answer than they do right now.
Absolutely. Stepping away from the process a little bit and just looking at what happened in Iowa, right? So it looks like Pete Buttigieg is now named as the winner, basically a tie with Bernie Sanders. There was an interview over the weekend with James Carville, who managed the last campaign of a Democrat to successfully unseat a sitting Republican president in 1992. And his quote, I really jumped out at me. He talked about what's happening in the party, and he said, quote, "This is not going particularly well so far. This party needs to wake up and talk about things that are relevant to people. We don't need to become the British Labour Party. That's not going well over there." I think that was clearly a take at Bernie Sanders and his potential path to the nomination. What is your take on the way this process, it's only just started, and of course we'll learn a lot more tomorrow, but what's your take on the way this process has started and the likelihood of the party being able to come together around one of these candidates right now?
You know, that's my biggest thing I think about the most is, to be honest with you, whoever the Democrats choose in this country to be the leader of the party, to be the candidate for the Democrats, we all have to unite. Because if you don't think that this president could be reelected again, I think you're incorrect. We never thought 4 years ago, 3 years ago, that anybody like this man would be elected. We as a Democratic Party, and those of us that, or those of the people out there that are listening right now that are not Democrats, they might be registered independents or unaffiliates in our state, you're going to have to make a decision. And I'm hoping that you will make the decision that we believe is the right decision. That is that we cannot afford to continue to have a president that is like the president we have right now. And I will beg you, as a grandmother whose grandchildren live in this state, that we do not want our grandchildren or our children or our great-grandchildren to listen to the man that is in the White House right now. He forgets that there is, what we have in this country is freedom, and we have the right to pick the people we want to pick, and we have to understand that there's 3 branches of government. The president is not the dictator of this country, and we've got to make sure that people in this country understand. After we just saw what happened 2 weeks ago, last week, dictatorship is not what we want in this country.
You talk about coming together, and that certainly is what people in the party will want. But when you look at the spectrum of who's running right now, including people who aren't really Democrats, a year or two ago, you've got Bernie Sanders on one side, who has not traditionally been a part of the party. He caucuses with the party, but he's a socialist, Democratic socialist. Then you've got Mike Bloomberg on the other side, who has not been a Democrat. So you've got this extremely wide expanse.
It's true. Isn't it wonderful how Bloomberg got smarter to join the Democratic Party?
Well, it raises a question in a way, is like, what is a party, right? Because if at the end of the day, Trump, who was not really a Republican, came in, takes that party over, and now has them wrapped around his finger, apparently. And you've got people who weren't really Democrats running for the Democratic nomination. what is the role of parties at the end of the day when it comes to this process?
I think it's listening to what their ideals are, what they believe in, and when the people speak up for what is really important. And to me, you know, I know you talk about Bernie being one way and Bloomberg being the other, but the truth is, if you look at the majority of their ideas, is that the basic way that we as Democrats think? Now, to get to a certain point in the democratic process is one thing, but comparing it to the man that is running again for president, his treatment of women, minorities, he talks about, you know, giving, you know, that everything is great. Well, the other day, I happened to be very involved in healthcare when I was lieutenant governor. And when he turned around and said he wouldn't stop anybody with a pre-existing condition from going to the doctor, I almost fell out of my chair. You put the bill in to kill it. You put the bill in to kill Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, as most people know it. And how can people believe him anymore? Because he's not speaking the truth. And that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for our candidates to come out there and speak what they really believe, talk about the issues, so that people in this audience and all throughout understand what they truly believe in, and it's just not listening to a word, but look at the actions that have been taken care of ahead of time.
Healthcare, which you mentioned there, that should be a winning issue for Democrats. The polls suggest that it is. How concerned are you that this split that has emerged between the Bernie Medicare for All camp and then the Klobuchar, more practical,
How do you feel about it?
Biden keeping Obamacare. How do you feel about that split? And can Democrats win on that issue when there is such a divide even there?
Look, I truly believe that if you want to compare Bernie's issues to Biden's issues on health care, what they're going to find out is when they get in there, they're going to do the best thing that they can do to make sure that everybody has health care. Now, sometimes as a former elected official, I had an idea. I went into the legislature. I thought I had the greatest idea in the world. And it couldn't really fund it that way. It couldn't do it that way. So how do we get around it? You work with other people, and you come together and find the best possible way of getting around and getting to the issue that everybody has the ability to have health care, because that is so, so important to all of us.
So when it's said and done, do you think that this impeachment trial that we just came through will have helped or hurt Democrats' chances in 2020?
Well, let's just, here's where I a little bit disagree with you on. We went through an impeachment process. We never got to the trial part because you couldn't call in anybody to testify. So to me, this president has been impeached. That's the end of it. Do I think that it hurt the Democrats? I don't think so. I think the reason it didn't go any further than it went in the Senate, as it should have gone, is there's a fear within the Republican Party of their leadership. And we've seen in the last week how this president has decided to go against people that speak against them. And when you take a person like the officer who was named as had all the stars and stripes that he could have, and he talked to his father about coming from Russia, and don't worry, Dad, I'm going to be fine for telling the truth. And then he's fired or moved out, and because his brother would look like him, he got moved out too. People have to understand, I truly believe that we no longer can hide that this man speaks out of both sides of his mouth. And if there's a third way, he'll do it again.
So you think at the end of the day, it will be a wash, or you think it will help
I think, and I'm hoping that what it'll do is it'll excite more people, not in our state, because we're very fortunate. We have great representation in Washington, but I'm hoping in other states that they look at their senators that voted the way they did, or their representatives voted the way they did, and say, hey, we can't take this. He might be a nice person, they might be a nice person, but they didn't stand up to their oath of office. And we need people to stand up there. So I'm hoping that in other states, we see that uprising of saying, hey, we've got to get a Democrat in, and we've got to change the U.S. Senate so that we have the power to enforce the presidency, a good Democratic president.
How many candidates do you think will still be competitive and have a shot at this thing when the primary comes to Connecticut?
You know, that's a good thing. I'm not very good at gambling. I try a lot, but I don't do it very well. We're going to be open. We're going to be open, and you know what? Whoever is coming here, we're going to work to make sure we know that our election is going to be fine, and they'll be able to count the votes, so we don't have to worry about that. And whoever comes out of this thing, we just need to unite everybody.
Yeah. Let's talk about Connecticut a little bit. So Governor Lamont gave his State of the State last week.
Yep.
Very optimistic tone.
Absolutely.
I counted 15 standing ovations.
Yes.
That's pretty good for a relatively short speech. And clearly, from a policy point of view right now, the focus is this transportation bill, this trucks-only tolling proposal. This is essentially an intra-party issue right now. Democrats have the votes to get it done if they can find a way to get enough Democrats on board. Where do you think that stands right now?
You know, I think they are, as I understand it, they have a new bill out there. Yeah, I mean, they have a bill out there. I understand from rumors that the Republicans might bring another bill to look at it. This is a rumor, not absolute truth by anybody. It seems that, and they've talked about that in the Senate we might have 18-18 with the Lieutenant Governor breaking the tie. She should get used to that. It happens a lot. The House is, I'm hearing that they have the votes. And the problem we're having right now of why it's not, they originally wanted to schedule it for this week. But as you know, Representative Steinberg's in the audience here tonight, and I want to thank him for being here and serving. But as he knows, that the flu is going out, and there's a lot of sickness going throughout, and so they had to delay it because some of our state reps could not have made it in this week. So they're trying to get it in next week to make sure that we get people in.
How you've been in the position of trying to get legislation passed, not usually with the advantages numbers-wise that Governor Lamont has right now in terms of party advantages. When you've got that kind of advantage, but you're trying to get something that's not easy through, how is that process different? Trying to convince other Democrats to do something like this versus trying to get Republicans to sign on for a piece of legislation?
You're constantly talking to your delegation, trying to get to see what's bothering them about it. If there's something that can be changed a little bit to help them feel their comfort level. Sometimes it's really hard, and sometimes, a lot of times, people have to bite the bullet and they vote for it, even though they're not totally comfortable with it. And they would like to say that, nothing else is going to happen, and under their watch it won't. But they have to work as a team. And sometimes it's a give and take kind of situation. I will tell you, I sat through the income tax. And I will tell you, to this day, I can go to that room in the Legislative Office Building, which is room 2C, and I can walk into that room and I can tell you where everybody sat, because we spent so many hours in that room, and everybody was sitting depending upon their position on the income tax. And it's to me, it's not as bad as transportation is not as bad by any means.
Especially when you're talking about tolling
just
trucks
the trucks.
And that. I mean, this is really almost more philosophical for people who oppose it than it is coming right out of your own pocketbook.
Well, it's also thinking they see it a different way. I think that people have to understand that they have made a promise and that they will have a lockbox so that the money is not used for anything else but for the bridges and the roads that are necessary to be fixed in this state. I believe that these people, the legislators, truly believe in that, and I know the governor does, because the governor won't even touch the rainy day fund, which he's absolutely right on as a former state controller. I give him 3 cheers, hooray for that, because that rainy day fund is for a rainy day. And you might be getting wet out there, but you don't know what a rainy day is. This is not what we're having outside right now.
Do you, at the end of the day, you think it gets done?
You know what? I hope so.
What do Democrats who you talk to in the caucus, what is the thing that they most worry about in terms of passing a plan like the truck toll?
You know, nobody, I think some of it is the people out there that have been fighting against it. Sometimes when we're in favor of something, we don't gather our forces together and go out and speak up and support our elected officials. With all due respect to everybody out there. You know, the only time we get up to speak out is when we're angry at something. So if you walked into the Capitol the day near the transportation thing, all you saw were people with no toll signs on it. You didn't see people that were fighting out there saying, yes, give us those tolls. This is what it's really good for. This is what it's, you don't do that.
No one made signs to go out and protest for tolls? That's not,
yeah, you don't see that happen.
Yeah.
You don't see that happening. It's always the negative.
Right.
We need people to come out and speak about the positive, what it's good for. Call the legislature. As a former legislator or former elected official, the only time I got phone calls was when they were angry at me.
Yeah.
Nobody said, hey, man, you're doing okay.
So,
not even my husband would say anything nice about it.
So Governor Lamont asked you to take on this role as state chair a couple of years ago. You have had this incredible, basically undefeated political career, and were you at the time thinking that you were ready to ride off into the sunset politically? Was this, or is this something that you were actually looking to do? Like, where did this come from, and how did you first react when Governor Lamont asked you to take this on?
Should I tell you my kids' expression? No, I can't do that. You know what? As well, you know, I served as lieutenant governor. I truly said to everybody, it's time for me to retire, spend some time with the grandkids. And my husband and my children, except my husband took another, I was going to tell him to take a 3rd job because I didn't want to be home with him that much. Then Governor Lamont came and sat down and said, would you come out with me and let's talk? And I said, okay. You don't say no to your Democratic governor, you know?
So you said yes the first time?
Yeah, I should have learned to say no. Never learned to say no. So when the governor asked, and I said if that's what he wanted, I'd be willing to do it for him. And it's been interesting.
With your track record electorally, which just got more and more impressive as you became more and more experienced. Oh. Why didn't you run for governor? Why didn't you run for Senate? Why for president this year? I mean, there's Lord knows enough people are running right now. What was the thinking in terms of deciding to call it quits from an electoral point of view?
I have to really be honest about this. I thought it was time. You know, it's time. It's time to see some new people there.
Nancy, look at who's running right now for president.
That's right. At least I can still see them. That's good.
You'd be junior on that stage. Absolutely.
Not quite, Rob. I don't want to start telling lies. I would not be junior on that stage. I'm not junior on any stage. The truth is that, you know, sometimes it's time. You know, sometimes it's time to let people come in and whatnot. I've been very fortunate. The people of the state of Connecticut have been so great to me, and I truly appreciate every moment of it. But you know, if there's other ways I can help out, I was ready to do that. You know, I feel like I started out as in high school as a young candy striper at a hospital right after high school. And it's no different now, except I can't wear the stripes, so I'm back volunteering again. It's okay.
So I want to ask you a question about women in politics, right, and the challenges, but I feel like any way I ask it probably wouldn't quite be right. So I want to ask what women ask you most about being in politics, women who are running or thinking of running for office. What question you get the most from them, and how do you answer it?
I think I tell them the story. The one story I can tell is about running for state controller. To be honest with you, I never thought of running for state controller. I wasn't going to run again for state rep, but I was coming home from the Clinton administration, being sworn in, and I was in a car with 3 other people, and this gentleman's car was, and he kind of was, they all celebrated the night before, and so they asked me to drive the next day, and I did. So I'm driving his car, and he said to me, Nancy, are you really not going to run again? I said, no, I'm not going to run again, Pete. He said, well, if you could do anything you want in state government, what would it be? And I said, I'd probably be state controller. And he said, you mean Secretary of State? And I went, what? And he said, uh-oh, realized I said something wrong. And it's his car, so he was really worried. And so I decided to run for state controller, and it was kind of interesting because people weren't used to this happening, right? So the interesting part was a gentleman named Miles Rappaport was then running for Secretary of State at the same time, and we would go all of these different places. And they would always want to introduce us, and so they'd say, hey, the next Secretary of State, Nancy Wyman. Miles looked at me and said, what should I do? And I said, well, you don't look like a Nancy, so I'll get up. So I did. I got up and said, I'm Nancy Wyman. I'm running for state control. I know that's different in the state, but the way you can tell the difference is my voice is deeper than his, and he has sexier legs. And the interesting part about that is it breaks through the ideas of you should be in one place, should be in the other. In our own state convention that time, when I was running for state controller, they basically said, you know what, we have too many Jews on the ticket. And let's get rid of the woman Jew, because...
Someone said that to you.
Oh, yeah, it was all over the place, because we didn't have an Italian on the ticket then. And as it worked out, I had worked the state already, and I will tell you that people of the Democratic Party didn't care about what the leadership was saying about, but that they came out, and the convention was, you know, let Nancy run, was yelling from the convention. So it's good. Hi, everybody up there.
Yeah.
We have some young, wonderful students up there studying, so that's exactly what they should be doing. So if you hear a little bit of noise, they're studying, so that's good.
So when you hear, I mean, when you look statistically, it's gotten better. There are more women serving at every level of government, but you know, still that highest office, right? We've seen lots of women running for president this year. The top 2 in Iowa were men. Right now, the polls suggest the top 2 in New Hampshire may be men. What do you think is standing in the way at that level of a woman having that kind of success?
You know, I don't think there is. I think it's really the hard work, and I think these women are working as hard as they possibly can. But, you know, time tells and makes different things happen. We never thought we would have seen an African-American president. And we did. And we had a great African-American president. And we wish he could have run again. And again, again. But we can't give up hope like that. We can't just say that it's because they're women only. That there's a fight out there that we have to get recognized. And the ability has to be there. And, you know, might have to do it in smaller steps, but we're there. If you look at the women that are running on our ticket right now, they're 2 very, very strong women. Kamala Harris was a wonderful, strong lady, and she couldn't do it that way. But we had some real powerful women. Look at Nancy Pelosi. How many times did you think you'd see the Speaker of the House being a woman? You know? I love that name anyway, Nancy. But the truth is that we are seeing changes, and we're going to keep seeing changes. And we have to just be ready for it. We have to open. That's the one thing about the Democratic Party that is much different than the Republican Party. We have an open tent. We want people to join in the tent. We don't want doors in the town. We don't want to build walls, though I've got a wall I'd like to build around Mar-a-Lago, but that's a different story. But I do think that we do have the party of understanding, that want to give people a chance, that want to help out, that don't forget where they came from or their ancestors came from. And so I think you're going to see it. And I hope it's going to be in my lifetime. I'm going to work at it to make sure I am around. But, you know, if it's my granddaughters, it's okay too. But it's just, we can't give up hope. You know, the one thing that the governor said at the end of his speech was, Connecticut's great. Let's stop putting the state down. Well, the same thing is, this is a great country. This is a great Democratic Party. This is a great system, and we will see good things happening. And we have to keep it as a positive note. Your ancestors, my ancestors came here, and they thought the streets were paved with gold. And when they didn't find the gold there, they put the gold there. They worked hard to build up our country. And that's what people have to remember, that we still have more to go and we can do it.
Well, that is a great way to end the taped version of this interview on. So for those of you watching online, thanks for joining us, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
I'm going to take some questions from the audience
Sure.
now, but thank
Look,
you.
thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Thanks for watching.